Clara Benson was 28 when she discovered that her parents had erased her from their future. On a cool October afternoon, she drove 4 hours to her late grandmother Evelyn Benson's house, believing the family had gathered to discuss the estate together. Instead, she walked into what felt like a board meeting. Folders sat neatly on the dining table. Water glasses had been arranged with care. Her mother, Margaret Benson, occupied Evelyn's usual chair, while the family attorney, Mr. Harrison, waited with legal documents in front of him. Clara's older sister, Vanessa, sat quietly scrolling through her phone. "Sit down, Clara," Margaret said without greeting her. A strange feeling settled in Clara's chest. The room felt rehearsed, as if everyone had already read the script except her. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and began reading the revised will. One by one, he listed the assets Evelyn had spent decades helping the family build: the large colonial house, the rental cottages, the furniture business, the farmland, and several savings accounts. Every single asset was being transferred to Vanessa. Then came Clara's portion. $1. Just $1. The room remained silent. Vanessa never looked surprised. She simply folded her hands as though she had heard it all before. Clara stared at the attorney, certain she had misunderstood. Before she could speak, Margaret adjusted her glasses and said calmly, "Your father and I discussed this carefully. We agreed that you have always been our biggest disappointment." The word struck harder than the inheritance itself. Clara slowly turned toward her father, Edward Benson. He never looked up. Margaret continued speaking as if she were presenting a business report. "Your grandmother built something valuable. Your father spent years protecting it. Vanessa stayed here, supported the family, and made responsible choices. You chose a different path." Clara felt her hands trembling. "I became an interior designer," she replied quietly. "I built a career." Margaret sighed. "People around town tell us different stories. We've heard you're struggling financially. We've heard clients don't trust you. We've heard you're unstable." Clara frowned. None of it was true. She had never missed rent, never borrowed money, and never failed to pay her taxes. "Who told you those things?" she asked. Margaret hesitated. Across the table, Vanessa calmly poured herself a glass of water. That silence gave Clara her answer before anyone spoke. Over the following hour, pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Margaret mentioned conversations with neighbors, church friends, and old family acquaintances. Every story somehow connected back to Vanessa. One person claimed Clara had begged for loans. Another insisted she was drowning in debt. A third suggested her business was collapsing. None of that happened, Clara said firmly. Not one part of it. Her father remained silent. Vanessa simply shrugged. "People talk, Clara. That's not my fault." Later, Clara learned that during family gatherings, Vanessa often made small comments disguised as jokes. "Clara can't even keep a houseplant alive," she once joked in front of relatives. Everyone laughed. Yet each comment slowly built a false image. Over time, Vanessa had turned her sister into a cautionary tale without Clara ever knowing. Just before Clara left, Margaret handed her a small cedar box that had belonged to Evelyn. "Your grandmother specifically requested this go to you," Mr. Harrison explained. Vanessa smirked. A box. How fitting. Clara ignored the remark and accepted the gift. The cedar smelled faintly of old wood and lemon polish, reminding her instantly of her grandmother's bedroom. She wanted to open it immediately but couldn't bring herself to do it there. Not in front of the people who had just erased her. Holding the box tightly against her chest, she walked toward the door. Nobody asked her to stay. Nobody apologized. Nobody said they loved her. As she drove away from the house, tears blurred her vision. The estate was gone, but somehow the betrayal hurt far more than the lost money. That night, Clara sat alone in a small motel room and considered fighting back. She researched probate attorneys and inheritance disputes. Legally, she might have challenged the will. But every scenario ended the same way: years of expensive court battles and permanent family warfare. By sunrise, she had made a different decision. "I won't spend my life begging people to value me," she whispered to herself. A week later, she packed her belongings, loaded her car, and left Ohio behind. Her destination was Asheville, North Carolina, a city where nobody knew her family name. On the passenger seat sat Evelyn's unopened cedar box. Clara glanced at it during the 7-hour drive. Whatever waited inside remained a mystery. But for the first time in years, the future belonged entirely to her. The first months in Asheville tested Clara in ways she had never imagined. She rented a tiny furnished room above a frame shop and survived on a tight budget. During the day, she worked part-time at a furniture showroom. In the evenings, she visited real estate offices, introducing herself to agents and offering affordable home staging services. Most rejected her politely. A few gave her small opportunities. She often ate rice and beans for dinner and counted every dollar before spending it. Yet she refused to quit. One afternoon, a realtor named Deborah hired her to stage a bungalow that had sat unsold for months. After seeing Clara transform the space, Deborah smiled and said, "You have a gift. You see possibilities where others see problems." It was the first genuine encouragement Clara had received in years. A few months later, Clara met Daniel Brooks at a renovation site. Daniel specialized in restoring historic homes and immediately noticed her attention to detail. While reviewing her sketches, he pointed at a wall she planned to remove. "That's load-bearing," he said. Clara calmly showed him a structural solution she had already included in her design. Daniel studied the drawing and laughed softly. "Most designers leave those problems for contractors. You're different." Over several weeks, they worked together on small projects and discovered they shared the same philosophy. They loved preserving old homes instead of replacing them. Eventually, Daniel proposed a partnership. "You design them right," he said, extending his hand. "I'll build them right." After a long pause, Clara shook his hand. Together they founded Lark Design and Build. Their first major project involved restoring a neglected 1920s bungalow owned by a retired teacher named Doris. As workers removed old carpet from the staircase, beautiful heart pine wood appeared beneath it. Clara froze. The staircase reminded her of Evelyn's house in Ohio. Running her fingers along the polished wood, she suddenly realized why she loved restoration work so much. She wasn't simply repairing buildings. She was preserving memories. Doris cried when she saw the finished staircase. "You've given me my home back," she said. Clara smiled politely, but later that evening she sat alone in her apartment and thought about the house she had lost. For the first time, she understood that what hurt most was never the money. It was watching something meaningful fall into the wrong hands. One evening, Clara received a text from her cousin Sophia Reed, the only relative who still communicated with her. Sophia shared updates from Ohio and none of them were pleasant. Vanessa had purchased a luxury SUV. She had begun making expensive renovations to Evelyn's old house. Worse still, rumors about Clara continued spreading through town. "People still think you're broke," Sophia wrote. "Vanessa keeps telling everyone you're struggling." Clara stared at the message in disbelief. Even after winning everything, Vanessa continued attacking her reputation. Then Sophia sent something even more disturbing, a screenshot from a family group chat. Clara's name appeared repeatedly. Vanessa described her as irresponsible, embarrassing, and financially reckless. Margaret often agreed. Reading the messages felt like watching strangers discuss a fictional character wearing her face. That night, Clara finally opened the cedar box. Inside lay 3 items carefully wrapped in white cloth. The first was Evelyn's old brass measuring tape. The second was a set of hand-drawn architectural blueprints showing the complete restoration plans for the family house. The third item was a letter. Clara unfolded the paper carefully and began reading. "Dear Clara," it started, "if you're reading this, they've already decided you're the difficult one." Tears filled her eyes instantly. Evelyn wrote that she had noticed Margaret's favoritism toward Vanessa years earlier. She had witnessed Vanessa's manipulation and knew exactly what was happening. One sentence stopped Clara cold. They will call you a disappointment because you refuse to shrink yourself to fit their expectations. For the first time since leaving Ohio, Clara felt completely understood. The letter changed everything. Clara framed the blueprints and hung them above her desk. She carried Evelyn's brass measuring tape to every project. As months turned into years, Lark Design and Build flourished. One successful restoration led to another. Soon the company employed several workers and earned recognition throughout North Carolina. Regional magazines featured Clara's work. Historic preservation organizations praised her designs. Every success felt like another brick added to a foundation she had built herself. Yet despite her growing reputation, she never contacted her parents. She no longer needed their approval. Then one afternoon, Sophia called instead of texting. Her voice sounded nervous. "Clara," she said, "something terrible is happening back home. Vanessa is losing the house." Clara slowly looked up at Evelyn's blueprints hanging on her office wall. Sophia explained everything during that phone call. After inheriting the estate, Vanessa had closed the family furniture business and invested heavily in a new event planning company. The venture failed within months. To cover her losses, she borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars against Evelyn's historic home. She stopped making payments, Sophia said quietly. The bank is threatening foreclosure. As photos of the property arrived on Clara's phone, her heart sank. The porch sagged noticeably. Water damage stained the staircase. Cracks appeared in the woodwork Evelyn had restored decades earlier. The house wasn't being destroyed by fire or disaster. It was dying slowly through neglect. Clara stared at the blueprints hanging above her desk and remembered the final line in Evelyn's letter, "Don't let this house become a stranger's." Suddenly, she knew exactly what she had to do. Rather than calling her family, Clara contacted Daniel and the company's attorney. Together, they reviewed the numbers. Lark Design and Build had grown into a successful business with strong financial backing and several major investors. Purchasing the property was completely possible. "Are you sure this isn't about revenge?" Daniel asked during a meeting. Clara thought carefully before answering. "No," she said. "If I wanted revenge, I'd let the developers tear it down." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then why buy it?" Clara smiled faintly. "Because it's worth saving." Within days, the company submitted an official offer through legal channels. The proposal included one unusual condition: the house had to be preserved according to Evelyn's original restoration plans. Nobody on the seller's side knew that Clara was behind the offer. They only saw a serious business proposal from an out-of-state firm. The sale process moved quickly. Vanessa, overwhelmed by debt, accepted the offer without paying much attention to the details. Edward signed because the bank demanded action. Margaret agreed because there were few alternatives left. 3 weeks later, the final walkthrough was scheduled. Clara drove back to Ohio for the first time in 3 years. As she approached the house, memories flooded her mind. The porch looked worse than the photographs. Paint peeled from the columns. The yard lacked the care Evelyn once gave it. Inside, she found her father, the family attorney, several neighbors, and the realtor waiting for the buyer's representative. None of them recognized her immediately. The realtor smiled and gestured toward Clara. "Everyone," she announced, "this is Clara Benson, principal designer and owner of Lark Design and Build." The room instantly fell silent. Edward stared at his daughter in disbelief. His eyes moved from her face to the portfolio she placed on the kitchen counter. The folder contained photographs of completed restorations, magazine articles, financial statements, and awards earned by her company. Slowly, he turned the pages. "This can't be real," he whispered. Clara said nothing. A few moments later, Margaret arrived and stopped in the doorway. Shock flashed across her face. "Clara?" she asked. "What's happening?" Edward finally found his voice. "She's the buyer." Margaret looked around the room, searching for another explanation, but there wasn't one. Tears quickly filled her eyes. "We're still family," she said. "We made mistakes, but we can fix this." Clara met her gaze calmly. "You called me your biggest disappointment," she replied. The room became silent once again. Instead of arguing, Clara walked toward the staircase carrying Evelyn's brass measuring tape. She carefully examined the damaged wood, measured the treads, and recorded notes in a small notebook. Every action reminded everyone present why she was there. Not as a rejected daughter begging for acceptance, but as a professional saving something they had failed to protect. When she returned to the kitchen, she explained the restoration plan. The company would preserve the property exactly as Evelyn intended. She also offered her parents a 1-year lease on the guest cottage while they arranged new housing. Margaret frowned. "You're charging us rent?" Clara answered calmly. "I'm offering you time." The distinction mattered. This wasn't a family favor. It was a business decision. For the first time, Margaret seemed unable to control the story. The sale closed the following week. Ownership officially transferred to Lark Design and Build. The loan was paid. The foreclosure threat disappeared. As everyone prepared to leave the attorney's office, Edward remained seated. He looked at Clara one final time. "I don't understand," he admitted quietly. Clara slipped the keys into her pocket beside Evelyn's measuring tape. "You never asked," she replied. Over the next 7 months, she and Daniel led a complete restoration of the property. The staircase was repaired. The porch rebuilt. The bay windows restored with period-appropriate glass. Even the dining room wallpaper was recreated to match Evelyn's original design. By the time the project was finished, the house looked as beautiful as it had decades earlier. It no longer belonged to the Benson family. Yet somehow, it finally honored Evelyn's legacy again. Years later, visitors entering Clara's studio often noticed a small glass display case. Inside rested a brass measuring tape, a cedar box, and a set of faded blueprints. When clients asked about them, Clara simply smiled. Those objects reminded her of a lesson she would never forget. The people who crossed her name out of a will believed they were deciding her worth. They thought success belonged to the daughter who inherited everything. In the end, the opposite proved true. Vanessa inherited wealth and lost it. Clara inherited a measuring tape, a letter, and a little faith from her grandmother. She used those things to build a business, restore a legacy, and create a life entirely on her own terms. Sometimes the person labeled a disappointment is simply the person brave enough to become something different.